a lesson in peace and growth, learning through the story of the Buddha. Today, we will learn English through a story that also teaches wisdom, the story of the Buddha, a teacher and guide who showed the world the path of peace and understanding. This story is written in simple and clear English to help you practice reading, listening, and thinking, while also learning values such as mindfulness, compassion, and patience. As you follow each part, focus on new words, the flow of sentences, and the deeper meaning behind them. Just as the Buddha grew in awareness and shared his insight with others, we too can grow in knowledge, calmness, and kindness by studying a little every day, staying patient, and believing in our progress, the early years. Long ago, in the ancient land of Lumbini, a gentle prince was born beneath the soft glow of morning light. His name was Siddhartha, a child whose presence brought peace to the hearts of all who looked upon him. His father, King Suddhodana, dreamed that his son would rule the world with power and wealth, while his mother, Queen Maya, saw in him a vision of great wisdom. The palace where Siddhartha grew was a place of comfort and beauty. Gardens bloomed with fragrant flowers, fountains sang in the courtyards, and every need was met before a thought could arise. Yet, even surrounded by such luxury, the young prince carried a calm silence within him. He often wandered through the gardens, listening to the rustling leaves and the quiet rhythm of his own breath. His teachers taught him about courage, archery, and wisdom. He learned to ride horses, to understand stars, and to show kindness to all beings. People said his mind was sharper than a blade, and his heart gentler than a dove's wing. The servants whispered that his eyes held both joy and sorrow, as though he could already see beyond the walls of the palace. One day, while walking among the lotus ponds, Siddhartha saw a wounded swan fall from the sky. He lifted the bird carefully and tended to its broken wing until it could fly again. Watching it soar into the distance, he felt a strange longing rise within him, a wish to heal not just bodies, but the invisible suffering hidden in the hearts of all creatures. Though his father wished to shield him from pain, Siddhartha's heart began to sense that beyond the palace gates lay a truth greater than comfort. At night, he would gaze at the stars and wonder why people must grow old, fall ill, and die. The silence of the moon seemed to whisper questions no one could answer. The years passed, and Siddhartha married a kind princess named Yasodhara. Their union brought peace to the palace, and soon a child was born to them, a son they named Rahula. Yet even as joy filled his home, a quiet restlessness stirred in Siddhartha's soul. He felt that his life, though full, was not complete. Something vast and unseen called to him from the edge of his dreams, like a faraway drum echoing to the forest of time. He longed to step beyond the golden walls and see the world as it truly was. Though the king forbade him, Siddhartha's heart could not rest. He needed to understand why joy faded, why love turned to grief, and why peace seemed so fragile. He wanted to find a path that would end sorrow itself. And so, one fateful morning, Siddhartha ordered his charioteer to take him through the streets of the city. The journey would change his life forever, the four sights. When Siddhartha left the palace for the first time, the air felt different, cooler, raw, filled with the pulse of life beyond the gates. The streets were lined with people of all kinds, merchants calling out their goods, children laughing, old men resting in the shade. For the first time, he saw faces unhidden by luxury or illusion. As the chariot moved slowly through the crowd, Siddhartha's gaze fell upon a man whose back was bent and whose hair was white as ash. His hands trembled as he leaned on a staff, his movements slow and uncertain. Siddhartha had never seen such weakness before. The prince asked his charioteer who this man was, and the answer struck him deeply. He was seeing old age. The realization spread through his heart like a shadow. Every face he knew, even his own, would one day wear that same mark of time. On another day, he went out again. This time, he saw a man lying on the ground, his body thin and shaking with pain. His breath came in gasps, and his eyes were clouded with suffering. It was sickness, raw and real. Siddhartha watched in silence, feeling a deep ache within him. The fragile beauty of life now appeared bound by an unseen chain of pain. Days later, he ventured once more. On the roadside, he saw a group of people carrying a body wrapped in cloth. The air was heavy with incense and sorrow. Siddhartha asked what had happened, and when he learned that this was death, the end that spares no one, his heart trembled. He realized that all who live must one day die, leaving behind their homes, their dreams, their loves. Each vision peeled away a layer of his ignorance. The world was not only filled with joy and pleasure, but also with loss and decay. The truth was vast and unkind, yet it felt honest. Still, the final journey brought something new. As he rode through a quiet path at dusk, Siddhartha saw a man dressed in simple robes, his face calm, his step steady. The man's eyes shone with peace unlike anything Siddhartha had ever seen. His presence seemed untouched by fear or desire. When he learned that this man was a wandering ascetic, someone who had left the world to seek freedom from suffering, Siddhartha felt a spark of recognition. That night, the palace no longer felt like home. The music, the silks, the feasts, all seemed like a veil drawn over a deep truth. He looked upon his sleeping wife and child with tender sorrow, realizing he loved them too much to let them share his ignorance. He knew he must go. So, under the quiet gaze of the moon, Siddhartha rose from his bed. The wind whispered through the trees as he took one last look at the life he was leaving behind. Without anger, without fear, he stepped into the darkness, seeking light not for himself alone, but for all who suffer. He crossed the gates, mounted his horse, and rode into the unknown. The prince became a wanderer. The journey to awaken had begun, the great renunciation. As the moon guided his path through the silent woods, Siddhartha felt the weight of the world lift from his shoulders. The golden crown of a prince was gone. In its place was the quiet strength of a seeker. The perfume of the palace was replaced by the scent of earth and rain. He no longer rode as a ruler, but walked as a man among men, searching for what no riches could buy, freedom from suffering. At dawn, he reached the edge of a river and dismounted. There, beneath the pale morning light, he cut his long hair with his sword and exchanged his royal garments for the simple robes of a beggar. The sound of the blade slicing through his hair was like a bell that marked the end of one life and the beginning of another. He placed his jewelry and ornaments on a stone, letting them sink into the flowing water. The river carried them away, as if washing away his old self. Now he walked barefoot, his steps steady and silent. He begged for food as other monks did, accepting whatever was given with gratitude. The people who met him saw not a prince, but a gentle wanderer whose eyes held peace. He sought teachers known for their wisdom, men who had devoted their lives to meditation and restraint. From them, he learned deep concentration, the stillness of breath, and the quiet power of thought. Yet, though he mastered their teachings, his heart knew that true liberation still lay beyond. He left those teachers with respect and continued alone. Days turned to months. His body grew thin as he lived on a few grains of rice, his ribs showing like the bones of a bird. He meditated beneath trees and by river banks, his mind sharp but his strength fading. The forest was his companion, its silence both friend and test. Nights were cold, days were burning, yet he endured them all. 5 other seekers joined him, impressed by his discipline. Together, they practiced extreme austerity, believing that through pain they might conquer desire. But as the seasons passed, Siddhartha saw that tormenting the body only clouded the mind. The more he starved, the farther peace seemed to drift. One day, as he sat trembling from hunger, he realized that suffering could not end through suffering. Balance, not denial, was the key. At that moment, a young village girl named Sujata saw him and, thinking him a spirit, offered him a bowl of sweet rice milk. Siddhartha accepted it with gratitude. The food revived him, and for the first time in years, he felt strength return. His companions, seeing this, turned away in disappointment, believing he had abandoned the path. But Siddhartha knew that a new understanding had dawned. Neither indulgence nor self-punishment would lead to truth. That night, as the sun sank beyond the forest, Siddhartha washed himself in the river. The cool water reflected the stars like a mirror of the heavens. He felt the universe whisper its secret. The middle path, the way of balance, was a true way. With calm resolve, he walked toward a great fig tree by the riverbank. There, he spread grass beneath him and sat down, crossing his legs. He vowed not to rise until he found the answer that would end all sorrow. The wind grew still. The earth itself seemed to hold its breath. Under that tree, the Bodhi tree, Siddhartha closed his eyes and began his final meditation, the night that would turn the seeker into the awakened one at the night of enlightenment. Beneath the great Bodhi tree, Siddhartha sat in perfect stillness. The soft grass cradled his body, and the air around him shimmered with quiet power. The river murmured nearby, carrying away the echoes of the world. He had renounced pleasure and pain alike, and now he faced the final frontier, his own mind. As darkness deepened, thoughts rose and fell within him like waves. Memories of the palace, his wife, his son, the laughter of his youth, all drifted past like passing clouds. Yet his heart remained unmoved. He breathed with the rhythm of the universe, his awareness vast and clear. The roots of the tree reached into the earth as his consciousness reached into truth. Then came the first challenge. Shadows gathered and the air grew cold. The tempter Mara, spirit of ignorance and desire, sent forth visions of fear and doubt. Storms roared, lightning tore the sky, and voices whispered of failure. Images of armies and monsters surrounded him, illusions meant to break his peace. But Siddhartha did not move. He placed his right hand upon the earth, calling it to witness his vow. The ground trembled softly in response, and the illusions faded like smoke and wind. Mara's whispers turned to promises, wealth, power, immortality. Each offer glittered before him. Yet Siddhartha saw through them all. Desire could not bind one who had ceased to crave. When temptation lost its hold, Mara sent his final test. Visions of beauty, warmth, and longing. But Siddhartha's compassion was too vast to be shaken by longing. He saw in all forms the same truth, birth, decay, and death. The chain of craving dissolved. Hours passed, and midnight came. His mind entered the deepest stillness. Within that silence, he saw his past lives unfold like pages in an endless book. Countless births, countless deaths, endless cycles of joy and sorrow, all connected by a single thread of desire and ignorance. With each vision, his understanding grew clearer. As the night continued, he turned his insight outward. He saw how all beings were bound to this endless wheel of rebirth, trapped by their own craving and blindness. He saw the law of cause and effect, the web of actions and results that wove every life together. Nothing existed alone. All things arose and faded in interdependence. In the final watch of the night, as the first light of dawn began to touch the horizon, a great peace descended. Siddhartha's mind became one with the truth itself. He saw the end of ignorance, the extinction of desire, and the path that led to liberation. The store within and without fell silent. The stars grew faint. The morning star rose, and in its light, Siddhartha became the Buddha, the awakened one. He sat beneath the tree as the sun rose, bathed in the gentle glow of realization. All fear, all confusion, all separation had vanished. Compassion filled him like light fills the sky. The earth seemed to rejoice. Flowers bloomed, and birds sang as if welcoming a new dawn for all life. For 7 days, the Buddha remained there, unmoving, not in trance but in perfect awareness. He gazed upon the world with eyes of infinite love. He saw that every being carried the seed of awakening, that enlightenment was not his alone, but the birthright of all. The path was clear now, to teach others a way beyond sorrow, the way of the middle path. When he finally rose from beneath the tree, his steps were calm and his heart was boundless. The prince who had left his palace seeking truth had returned as the light of wisdom for the world. The first teaching. After his awakening, the Buddha wandered to the forest in silence. The air was fresh with morning dew, and every sound, the cry of birds, the rustle of leaves, seemed to echo with deeper meaning. He no longer saw the world to desire or fear. Each breath was peace, each step a reflection of balance. Yet he knew that his journey was not complete, for the truth he had found was meant to be shared. At first, he wondered whether others could understand what he had realized. The truth was subtle, like the fragrance of a flower that cannot be grasped by hand. But as he sat beneath a tree and watched the sunlight filter through branches, he felt compassion rise within him. He saw that even those lost and ignorant suffered because they did not see clearly. He knew that he must teach, not out of pride, but out of love. He began to travel toward the city of Varanasi, where the Ganges River shimmered like a ribbon of light. Along the way, he met the 5 ascetics who had once been his companions. They had abandoned him when he took food, believing he had fallen from the path. When they saw him now, his face calm and radiant, they felt both awe and doubt. But as he approached, the air itself seemed to grow still. Without a word, they felt the truth of his awakening and bowed before him. In the quiet grove of Isapatana, known as the Deer Park, the Buddha sat upon the grass and began to speak. His voice was gentle, yet it carried the strength of mountains. He told them of the middle way, the path between indulgence and self-denial. Neither extreme led to peace. Only balance could free the mind. He revealed the 4 noble truths, that life is touched by suffering, that suffering arises from craving and attachment, that freedom from craving and suffering, and that the path to this freedom is the noble 8-fold path, a way of right understanding, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. The ascetics listened with open hearts. As his words sank into their minds, the light of understanding dawned. The chains of confusion loosened. They became the first disciples, the first Sangha, a community bound not by blood or power, but by the shared pursuit of truth. The Buddha spent the days that followed guiding them gently, not through commands, but through example. He showed them how to walk mindfully, to breathe with awareness, to live simply, to treat all beings with kindness. His wisdom was not distant philosophy. It was a way of life grounded in compassion. As the teaching spread, others came, monks, farmers, nobles, and beggars, all drawn by the calm presence of the enlightened one. They called him the Tathagata, the one who had gone beyond. Yet he never claimed greatness. He said that he was only a guide, showing the path each must walk for themselves. The Buddha and his small band of followers moved from village to village. They carried no possessions but a bowl for alms. When they entered a town, they stood silently, accepting whatever food was offered with gratitude. In return, they offered the people peace, understanding, and the joy of mindfulness. Everywhere he went, the Buddha left behind not monuments, but hearts awakened. He spoke not of gods or miracles, but of seeing clearly, of ending ignorance, of walking gently upon the earth. The Deer Park became a symbol of renewal, the place where wisdom first took root in the soil of the human heart. And as night fell upon the land, the Buddha rested beneath the open sky, gazing at the stars. They shone not as distant fires, but as reflections of truth. Each one a reminder that light, once kindled, can never truly fade. The spreading of the Dharma. In the years that followed, the Buddha walked across plains and forests, through villages and kingdoms, his bare feet tracing the paths of peace. Wherever he went, people gathered around him. They came not for miracles, but for words that soothe their hearts and awaken their minds. The Buddha spoke simply, using images from daily life. Water flowing in a stream, seeds growing in soil, the wheel turning upon its hub. Through such words, he opened doors within the hearts of those who listened. His disciples grew in number. Some were kings who had known power but not peace. Some were farmers who sought freedom from toil and fear. Some were women who found in his teaching a voice long silenced by the world. To all of them, he gave the same truth, that wisdom and compassion are the twin wings by which the heart may rise beyond suffering. He taught that no one was bound by birth or rank. Nobility was not inherited, but earned through virtue. Every person carried the capacity for awakening, as every seed carries the promise of a tree. His words dissolved the barriers of caste and pride. In his presence, even the humblest felt seen, and even the mighty learned humility. One of his followers, the monk Sariputta, became known for his deep understanding, while another, Moggallana, was praised for his quiet strength. There was Ananda, gentle and faithful, who served as the Buddha's companion and remembered his teachings with perfect clarity. Together, they spread the Dharma like a river that flows without end. The Buddha's way of life was simple. He rose before dawn, meditated in silence, and then walked through villages to receive alms. He ate only what was offered, and when his bowl was full, he returned to sit beneath the shade of trees, teaching those who came to him. He asked nothing for himself, only that others walked the path with mindfulness and kindness. His presence changed the hearts of men. Quarrels ceased in his shadow. Greed melted in his calm gaze. Thieves became honest, kings became gentle, and even those who had hated found peace. He spoke often of impermanence, reminding all that joy and sorrow, gain and loss, birth and death were part of one great rhythm. To cling was to suffer. To see clearly was to be free. He taught his followers to observe their thoughts like passing clouds, to live in the present moment where life truly unfolds. Be like the lotus, he said, rising pure and untouched from the muddy water. His disciples took these lessons into every corner of the land, carrying with them no weapons, no banners, only the calm of awakened hearts. Seasons turned, and the Buddha's fame spread even to distant realms. Yet he remained the same, humble, serene, and mindful. When kings offered him palaces, he chose instead the open forest. When asked to perform wonders, he answered that the greatest miracle was a mind free from hatred. He returned often to the city of Rajagaha, where King Bimbisara, one of his early followers, built a bamboo grove for him and his monks. There, under the rustling leaves, the Sangha flourished. The Buddha taught not only monks but also householders, reminding them that enlightenment was not only for those who left the world, but for anyone who lived with awareness, compassion, and balance. Each evening, when the world grew quiet, the Buddha would sit and gaze into the horizon. He saw no boundary between himself and the universe, no division between life and death. The same truth that had awakened under the Bodhi tree flowed through all things. He felt the breath of the world as his own, and in that unity, there was no end, only peace spreading outward like ripples in an endless sea, the compassionate journey. Years passed, and the Buddha's path continued to unfold like a river meeting new lands. He was no longer young, yet his steps remained steady, guided by compassion. His hair had turned gray, and his body showed the marks of time, but his eyes still shone with the same calm light that had once pierced the darkness beneath the Bodhi tree. Wherever he went, people gathered, and his teachings became like rain upon dry fields. He moved through forests, towns, and villages, accompanied by monks and nuns who carried his message of wisdom and peace. The Sangha had grown into a great family of seekers, bound not by blood or creed, but by a shared vow to live mindfully. In every place, They built small shelters and monasteries where people came to learn a way of right living and meditation. The Buddha taught that compassion is the heart of all practice. He urged his followers to treat every living thing with gentleness, to care for the sick, to comfort the sorrowful, to forgive those who cause harm. He said that kindness was not a gift given to others, but the very nature of an awakened heart. One season, as the rains began, the Buddha stayed near the city of Isali. There he met a woman named Ambapali, a courtesan known for her beauty and wealth. When she heard him teach, her heart was stirred with faith. She offered him her grove as a place for the monks to rest, and from that day she lived a life of virtue and service. Her act showed that even those once lost in worldly pleasure could blossom into purity through understanding. Another time, he met a murderer named Angulimala, feared by all for his cruelty. When the Buddha approached him, the man's rage melted before the calm of his presence. Angulimala fell to his knees, trembling with remorse, and became a monk under the Buddha's guidance. Through mindfulness and repentance, he found peace at last. The Buddha showed that no soul was beyond redemption. Everywhere he went, the Buddha faced questions and challenges. Scholars debated his teachings, priests doubted his way, and skeptics mocked his simplicity. Yet he met all with patience. His answers were not born of argument, but of stillness. He reminded people that truth was not something to be won, but something to be realized through silence and seeing clearly. He often taught through stories. He spoke of farmers sowing seeds of virtue, of lamps that pass their flame without losing light, of rain that falls equally upon all fields. These tales carried wisdom beyond words, reaching both the wise and the simple alike. Children listened with wonder, elders with tears. In every heart, a quiet understanding began to bloom. In his later years, the Buddha returned to Kapilavastu, his birthplace. There he met his son Rahula, now a young monk, and Yesodhara, who had long lived in contemplation. Seeing them again, the Buddha felt no attachment, only deep peace. He saw that love freed from grasping was the purest kind of love, the love that seeks only the happiness of others. As he continued his journey, his steps grew slower, but his mind remained clear as crystal. He taught that even his own body was impermanent, subject to the same laws as all things. His disciples wept, but he reminded them that everything born must pass, and that true refuge was not in a person but in the Dharma, the eternal law of truth. Under the wide sky of northern India, the Buddha's teaching spread like dawn across the horizon. Villages once filled with conflict became places of peace. Kings began to rule with compassion. The cries of cruelty grew fewer, replaced by chants of mindfulness. The middle way, once a quiet whisper beneath a tree, had become the heartbeat of a civilization. And still the Buddha walked, his shadow falling softly upon the earth, his presence a reminder that wisdom, once awakened, never sleeps. The final journey. The Buddha's final years were marked by calm acceptance. He had walked the path of awakening, guided countless beings, and watched the seeds of wisdom take root in many hearts. The rains had fallen and passed many times since his birth, and now, in the quiet rhythm of age, he felt the gentle nearness of completion. His body, once strong, had grown frail, but his spirit remained vast and boundless as the open sky. He continued to travel, teaching wherever he was welcomed. His disciples begged him to rest, but he reminded them that life itself was movement, and the Dharma was his breath. He walked slowly, supported by Ananda, his faithful attendant. The road stretched across fields golden with harvest, through forests alive with birdsong, and into villages where people still waited to hear his words. One evening, as they reached the town of Pava, a blacksmith named Kunda invited the Buddha to share a meal. The Buddha accepted with gratitude, knowing that each act of giving carried its own merit. He ate calmly, blessing the food and the hands that had prepared it. Later that night, he fell ill, his body weakened, Yet his mind remained unshaken. To ease Kunda's worry, he told Ananda that the gift had been pure and that kindness was never wasted. Even in pain, his concern was for others. At dawn, he asked to be taken to Kusinara, a small town surrounded by sal trees. As they walked, the sun shone softly through the leaves, and the earth glowed with quiet peace. When they reached a grove where flowers were in bloom, he lay down on his right side, resting his head upon his hand. The sal trees, as if aware of the moment, began to shed their blossoms gently, covering him in a rain of white petals. Disciples gathered around him, their faces filled with sorrow. Ananda knelt beside him, tears falling silently. The Buddha spoke softly, reminding them not to grieve. He told them that all things conditioned must pass away, and that they should seek refuge not in his presence, but in the Dharma and their own mindfulness. Be a lamp unto yourselves, he said. Walk the path with diligence. As evening came, monks and wanderers from distant places arrived to pay their respects. Some sat in meditation. Others simply gazed upon him with reverence. The forest grew still, as if listening. The Buddha's breathing slowed, calm and steady like the rhythm of a peaceful tide. In those final moments, he looked out toward the fading light. His eyes were serene, his lips faintly curved in peace. There was no fear, no clinging, only the vast stillness of realization. His mind entered the deep state of nirvana, where all delusion and suffering end. The great teacher who had walked the earth as a man passed beyond all becoming. That night, the air was fragrant with the scent of blossoms. The monks sat in silence, their hearts heavy yet illuminated by the truth he had revealed. They knew that though his body was gone, the Dharma remained, the eternal flame that no wind could extinguish. His teachings would live wherever compassion bloomed and wisdom shone. In time, stupas were built to honor him, but the Buddha's true legacy was not in stone or relics. It was in every act of kindness, in every moment of understanding, in every heart that awakened to the truth. His message echoed through centuries, that peace is born within, that love grows from awareness, and that freedom waits in the silence of seeing things as they truly are. And so the story of the Buddha became more than memory. It became a mirror for all who seek. The prince who renounced a kingdom had given the world a greater treasure, the path to end all sorrow. The Bodhi tree still stands in the hearts of those who walk that path, its roots deep in compassion, its leaves whispering the eternal truth. Awakening is possible for all. Under the vast sky of endless time, the light of the Buddha continues to shine, not as a star above, but as a quiet flame within every living being, reminding the world that peace begins where understanding blooms. What we can learn. The Buddha story is more than a tale from the past. It is a lesson about the power of peace, understanding, and balance. He taught that true strength does not come from wealth or comfort, but from a calm mind, gentle speech, and compassionate actions. In the same way, learning English or any new skill takes steady effort and attention. You must keep practicing, reading, writing, listening, and thinking, even when it feels challenging. Each small moment of focus is a step toward growth. Mistakes are not failures. They're like stones on a path that help you learn to walk more wisely. Every correction is progress. Real learning, like enlightenment, grows slowly through patience and awareness. By following this example, you will see that learning a language is not only about remembering words. It is also about becoming more peaceful, more focused, and more confident. Thank you for reading and learning through the story of the Buddha. If you enjoyed it, continue your practice with more stories that teach language and wisdom together. Keep your heart calm, your mind open, and let every new word guide you toward understanding in English and in life.